Welcome into Dolphins Today. We have some news as Miami making some roster moves in the middle of training camp. We'll break down all four, plus the two other players the Dolphins worked out at the end. Pour one out from a boy, Will Scott. Punter Michael Turk has been cut. Defensive back Bennett Williams, both of those guys UDFAs this year. Williams was waived injured. We'll explain that designation later on. Two players signed as well. Safety Myles Dorn, he's a one-to-one replacement for Bennett Williams. And then Mike Rose, the off-ball linebacker, has also been added. This one more of a depth option for the injured Zeke Vandenberg. But when injury news happens, when roster moves are made, whatever's going on, we have you guys covered as Dolphins training camp continues along today. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Hit that sub button right now, youtube.com/Dolphins News for all the latest on the Fins. Let's go player by player, breaking down who the new guys are and why the older players, or the former players, got cut. Myles Dorn is a safety who has spent some time in the NFL. He's actually played a little bit, predominantly on special teams. Dorn began his career as a UDFA out of North Carolina with the Minnesota Vikings. He spent 3 years there, getting some playing time in each of the past two campaigns, 9 and a couple games after that. Not massive impacts, but depth there. Was briefly picked up by the Carolina Panthers earlier this offseason, and then on a futures deal, I should say, then got waived. Now he is a member of the Dolphins. His path to the 53-man roster is probably not going to materialize. Now, maybe Dorn can impress in a special teams role, although I think Elijah Campbell has the advantage there alongside Verone McKinley. We'll actually spend some time on Campbell on a future video this weekend. Make sure you stay tuned for that one. But Dorn comes in to provide some depth in a safety room that, look, in the preseason, you're not going to play Javon Holland. And, you know, Brandon Jones is still kind of working his way back from injury, so a little bit thin there. This is a signing to maybe he can impress and make the practice squad, get you through, more importantly, the rest of training camp and the preseason. So I want you guys to be honest with me, because if the answer is yes, you've heard of Myles Dorn and Mike Rose, I'm proud of you. If the answer is no, that is okay, because that probably means you just have a life, or maybe you weren't a fan of Iowa State or whatever. So that is today's pinned comment. Entering today, when the Dolphins signed these two dudes, have you ever heard of Myles Dorn or Mike Rose before? Sound off in the comments at the pinned comment of today's video. Y for yes, N for no. My answer is yes, because I have no life. Mike Rose I'm actually more intrigued by this signing than Myles Dorn. Mike Rose spent this past year with the XFL's BattleHawks. He had 35 tackles, by the way. Pretty productive for the XFL. He has spent some time in the NFL. He was with the Chiefs during training camp in 2022. Did not make the roster, did not make the practice squad either. But this was a player who I scouted coming out of the NFL draft. Those of you who've been subscribed to Chat Sports for a while know that I spend too much of my off hours time, free time working on this stuff. Here's where I had a Rose graded clearly a little bit too high given what he's done so far in his NFL career. He was 166 overall for me. 16th ranked linebacker, a 5th round grade. He actually was one of my higher-ish undrafted players in that class. Some of the pros and cons I had down for Mike Rose, and you can see why the pros intrigue me in this signing, and the cons, why he hasn't made it thus far in the NFL. Rose was a 4-year starter at Iowa State. He actually tested pretty well athletically for his size. He's just under 6'4", was 245 pounds. By the way, had really great coverage production in 2020. He had 7 pass breakups and 5 interceptions, and he had at least 73 tackles all 4 years he started at Iowa State. There were some tackling issues, though. He had a 21.7% missed rate, 18 missed tackles total, around the ball a lot, but doesn't always finish. Doesn't have a massive amount of special teams impact. Did some field goal blocks. That was kind of it. And that matters a lot when you're fighting for like linebacker 5, linebacker 6 job. Like, you need to be a special teams contributor. I don't think Rose was that for KC. Although the zone coverage stuff I thought was pretty good, The man coverage, I didn't trust him in that area. This was kind of my little wrap-up scouting report on Mike Rose last year. 2022, excuse me. He can do zone coverage, but I worry about him in man, and his take-on skills aren't as polished as they should be for a 4-year starter of his size. 33 and a quarter inch arms, by the way, pretty damn good for an off-ball linebacker. I think he's likely best as a Sam linebacker. Those guys are more devalued these days. Or a 3-4 inside linebacker. He kind of played a box nickel hybrid role for Iowa State, part of that 3-3-5 scheme that they like to play. I think inside linebacker is his role here for the Miami Dolphins. Like, maybe a little bit in the Landon Roberts mold, although, of course, not that caliber of player. And that's why he just signed and why Roberts spent multiple years in the NFL. Again, Zeke Vandenberg is on IR for the season. You're trying to have players available for the preseason games, right? David Long, Jerome Baker are not going to play in the preseason. So you probably don't want to have just 3 off-ball linebackers in Duke, Riley, Aubrey, Miller, and Tyndall. Rose will help get you through that preseason game. I think it is unlikely he makes the roster. Ideally, he impresses and carves out a spot on the practice squad. We'll break down the players' cut and the 2 workouts as well. But first, like this NFL Jam. Sure, you guys remember NBA Jam, right? Awesome game. Or NFL Blitz, also an awesome game. There are some Dolphins-themed shirts. Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, and Dan Marino as well, available on Fanatics. Head over to chatsports.com/DolphinsJam. That link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. Check it out. It's an awesome shirt. I already bought one myself. Get yours today, chatsports.com/DolphinsJam. We will pour one out for our boy Willie Finns with the release of Michael Turk. We put this on the community's page later last night. A couple of you guys had asked why. Don't really know why. I would guess that the Dolphins had seen enough early on in camp to know that Jake Bailey was the better option. I'm not aware of anything like bad off the field for Michael Turk, so I think it's just performance so far. So Turk has been released. Pour one out for Will. And Jake Bailey now takes over as the assumed starter at punter. His numbers have declined a bit from his time in New England, so a little bit concerned on that front there. But Turk, we'll see if he gets a shot again in the NFL. Now, I know Will was, but are you guys upset that Michael Turk was released? M for you're mad, W for who cares? It's a punter. I go with the who cares. It's more of a punter side. I get the concerns about Jake Bailey as well, but go vote for me in the comments. Then there's Bennett Williams, the safety/defensive back for the Miami Dolphins. He was waived injured. Now, this is a different designation than just the waiving that the Dolphins did with Michael Turk. He did not waive back, by the way. If Williams ends up clearing waivers, he will revert to injured reserve. When you are a young player, you don't have the accrued seasons. Even if you're injured, you have to clear waivers in a different way than a veteran would have to. Like, if the Dolphins want to put Ramsey on IR, obviously they're not going to be out for the year. He would not go through waivers in that category. So Williams will go through waivers. I think he'll clear it. I'd be pretty surprised if the 2023 UDFA ends up getting claimed. The Dolphins then have 2 options. He can stay on injured reserve, get paid, or the Dolphins can release him. Some type of injury settlement, they'll get a little bit of money back. And then he can go sign somewhere else. I don't think it's a massive injury for Bennett Williams, type of leg injury, it seems, from that perspective. But if the team likes the player, they'll let him stay on IR and just stash him and try again next season. It does mean he cannot play for the rest of the year, though. So Williams off the depth chart here, much like Vandenberg. He's not technically cleared waivers. That'll happen later today if he does clear waivers. So we'll put him back on there. In the event he does make it all the way through. But for now, he is technically a free agent. Then there's Mark Gilbert, one of 2 players the Dolphins worked out. I liked him coming out of Duke. There were massive injury concerns for Gilbert several years ago at Duke. He flashed really well early in his career, had some like top 50 buzz, but then couldn't stay healthy. Flashed some for the USFL's Pittsburgh Maulers. He's done a couple different workouts as he hopes to find a team. And then veteran outside edge rushing linebacker Wyatt Ray also worked out for the team. He had been cut by the Broncos back in March. He's been kind of a career journeyman, Denver, Cincinnati, etc. So maybe guys to monitor in the event of more injuries, but for now, no moves coming on those 2.